Disclaimer. Due to the recording backlog, the content disclosed in this podcast may be dated. Thoughts and opinions stated are that of the speaker and not that of Transylvania University or the Rambler. Viewer discretion is advised. The content may not be appropriate for all audiences. If you are a listener, please enjoy. And if you're Dave, you owe me $5.
Nate, brother, it's
Hello.
about time. That's the name of the show.
Yeah,
How are you today?
Doing good. How are you doing today,
Doing
Will?
all right. So you were involved in the Rambler,
I am.
which is like this platform. Also, I apologize in advance. I know I have a podcast, but this weekend was crazy, and I was screaming a lot and using my voice. So if I sound off, that's why. But anyways, you're a part of the Rambler.
Yes.
What is your position, sir?
I'm the copy editor of The Rambler. I have been since, I guess, May of 2023 when I was elected to the position, end of my sophomore year. I've been part of The Rambler since it restarted after COVID, and when I was a freshman in August of 2021. I was just a writer, was promoted to an editor my sophomore year, and then the past 2 years I've served as copy editor, and I've been really impressed by the growth we've seen, primarily because of people like you who have joined the Rambler and helped contribute to it over those years. It's really helped us recover from that kind of dead period we had during COVID.
Yeah. So you said during COVID. So the Rambler's been around forever.
The Rambler's been around for since 1915 at least.
Which is wild.
Mm-hmm.
But print's not dead.
Print is not dead. We have revived print from its comatose state, but it was never dead.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, so I guess this is a genuine question, but what is your specific, because you have a position in the Rambler. Obviously,
Yes.
if you have a position in something, you should be somewhat interested in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess when you came to Transy, what was, I guess, the passion or the driving force that made you want to be in a head position in such a creative process?
I hate to say there wasn't much of a driving force. I tell this story a lot, and when you're a freshman, you can speak of this because you just went through it. There's a lot of push to get involved. Like, you need to get involved. You need to get involved right away to make those connections. So I was at the club fair, and my primary goal was signing up for the Quiz Bowl team my freshman year, which I joined and then died 2 months after I joined it. And then I thought, okay, well, that's only one club. I was a lot more involved. So I started looking around, and then I see paper just says student newspaper. So I thought, oh, well, I was in a yearbook class in high school. It's writing, which I can use practice on. Sure, I'll put my name down, but I'm not sure if I'll actually, go through with this. I'll go to the first meeting and see.
So this was during 2019?
This was 2021.
Oh, okay.
2021. Not that
Gotcha.
old.
It's like right after COVID.
Right after COVID.
Got it.
Still masks and everything, still after that second wave during summer, so it was still a very interesting first engagement.
Yeah.
So I go to our first meeting we had in the basement of the library, and it was Allison Spivey, who was the editor-in-chief of the Rambler that year, and the only member of the Rambler who made the transition from pre-COVID to post-COVID.
Jeez.
And then it was two other people who were Allison Spivey's friends who were freshmen, and then me. And they were like, "We're so happy that someone else is joining. We're in a tough place right now." And I thought, "Oh, I can't leave now. I'm stuck." Which I have so thoroughly enjoyed my time at Rambler. It's been the primary thing I've done outside of classes for all 4 years, and I'm so happy I just randomly chose it kind of as a secondary club to join my freshman year.
So you are a senior.
I am a senior.
So can I ask what plans are after college?
I'm going to Virginia Tech actually to get my master's degree in history.
There you go. Mm-hmm. So you're gonna be, I think, in like history, high school, or not high school, but like some sort of education. Or
I'm aiming for post-secondary education. Job market for that is a little tenuous already. Plus, recent circumstances have thrown it into doubt. So I'm keeping my options open, and that will require eventually going on to a PhD program. But this is a good start for that.
I think that's awesome. No, so history then.
Yes.
So have you just always been? Is that just an always thing, or?
For most of my life, really, it has been. There's like the sappy story I put in all my grad school personal statements about my mom buying a children's almanac when I was 8, and me going through the U.S. history section and memorizing the list of presidents and stuff like that. But it's always really been a continual interest for me. It started obviously with U.S. history because, that's in the environment we are. That's what you're primarily exposed to. Right. And I still, my focus area is still Civil War studies, so it's still kind of in that area, but it's really seeking out a lot of history, and I think it's in parts where it's in before college, when it's not really been like for academics, it was sort of a hobby in high school, like learning about it, reading books about it, reading like the crash courses about it, which I was an academic team in high school, so that had a co-curricular benefit to it as well, so I could justify. But it's always been something I've always been passionate about.
Yeah, I think that's sick. It's nice when, society says, these are things you need to learn. And you say, well, I'm interested in that anyway, so there you go.
Which I don't know how much society is really pushing it nowadays,
Right.
but at least a little bit,
Yeah, It's U.S. history is or not. Well, I'm assuming after U.S. history, you went into like more world history and stuff like that. Have you ever traveled like abroad? Or
I've never
anything like
traveled
that?
abroad.
Really?
No. I've visited a lot of the pertinent sites for like the research I've done and what I'm going into, but that's, again, a lot of that, because it's Civil War Studies, is in southeastern U.S., so it's not that inconvenient to get to.
Gotcha.
Never been abroad. Had plans to go abroad in summer of 2020.
Well, we all know what happened then. Where were you gonna go?
It was part of a high school choir program. It was going to be several countries in Europe, like London, Paris. There's going to be a day in Venice, some in Switzerland, Liechtenstein. It was a whole thing.
Yeah.
Never. Yeah.
Darn you, COVID.
Worst pandemic of my life.
But it's cool because we can say that we lived through a pandemic.
We lived through a pandemic. Historical things do keep happening to us.
It's true.
Yeah.
What a time to be alive.
What a time.
Yeah. On a lighter note, I will say, going back to the Rambler, I guess, I love being able to express in more ways than just, writing a paper or writing about it. Hence this podcast, or hence like creating through like a virtual means or something like that. So I guess, in your expert opinion, what are your thoughts on the state of, I guess, well, because written papers will always be a thing. And we literally, like, when we picked up our copy of the Rambler in the campus center, about 5 people that I asked were like, it is so nice to have a physical paper to read. It's great. What are your thoughts on, I guess, a physical world being, I guess, threatened by a more virtual world in the art of media creation for news and journalism?
Oh gosh, that's a loaded.
It's a packed question.
Yeah, it's a packed question.
Yeah.
I see a lot of value in physical media. I think there's something that is just irreplaceable, and this is like sentimental, like, oh, back in my day kind of mentality.
Yeah.
But I think there's something so special about that, being able to hold something in your hands that can't really be replicated by digital media. Not to say that digital media doesn't have value. If I'm keeping it in the scope of the Rambler, I'm not a Rambler historian, so I might have the dates a little wrong here. From what I believe, it was around 2015 or 2016 that the leaders of the Rambler at the time made the decision to switch from sort of a weekly print formula to entirely digital. And some of that was obviously motivated by funding. We don't exactly have the funding to do like weekly papers.
Right.
Hint, hint, administration, we'd love that back. That'd be so great. You want to do it so bad. And I think something really was lost there, because while the speed of articles kind of continued to an extent, there was less of a motivation to be like, okay, we need everything this week, and here's a roundup of everything this week. And because it was something that wasn't as widely distributed as a physical paper and it was all on one website, sure, it was convenient to get it, but it was less in your face. And I think slowly from that point, you kind of saw an unraveling a bit in 2019 in a famous incident. The Rambler got its student stipends taken away, which I'm not going to get into on this podcast. And then COVID hit. And we've kind of been working our way back up towards what the Rambler was at its peak since that moment. But I really do think a key part of that has been going back to at least somewhat the physical model, because our biggest events are those print copy handouts, and those are our biggest touchstone with the campus body, is handing out those papers and being able to see what we've published. I can't tell you how many times I've told people have been like, oh, why don't you do this more often? Why are only stories in here? We go, oh, we have a website. And they go, what? It's like,
we do have a website.
We do have a website, transyrambler.com. Please. But that just goes to show the power of physical media, and especially the association with something like a newspaper. Because when people think of newspapers, they think, that trifold,
Yeah.
actually being able to see it and not reading it on a website, even though there's an argument that's where the landscape is heading. There is something so valuable about at least the aesthetic of a newspaper.
Right. And I'll say, like, you bring up the idea of having, like, a physical, I guess, means. Whenever I go through a museum, I'm worried that museums in the future,
You're tapping into my deep-seated anxieties now as a history major.
No,
yeah,
it is scary, like, having all of these historical documents and, like, physical properties, I guess. But then now, as we're seeing more with the virtual side of things, how much of that is going to be transferred to a museum, or like where you can walk and see something physically, as opposed to just, this was typed on a computer. Yeah. We don't have, like, you can print it out and put that in a museum, but that's not the same as, having, like, this is the script that, I don't know. Yeah. Johnny Cash wrote this song on this piece of paper. We have it. Look at that. Like, it's different.
Like, I agree to the most part. I will want to say I don't want to wholesale dismiss technology. I think going into, like, deep seed history stuff, I think there is interesting stuff that's being done to integrate technology, especially in like public history, great things AR technology, very cutting edge stuff. Yeah. But I think there is something so valuable, like you said, like seeing the physical objects either in a museum or in a historic site. You can kind of feel the presence and importance of it in my experience. I don't really know if I want to cite a physical example, an actual example. And, to some extent, there are problems with museums, like everyone not really appreciating and just trying to snap a quick picture of, say, the Declaration of Independence and the National Archives and then run. But there is something about being able to see it, being able to make that connection with a site or an object and feel its importance, that you aren't just reading about it. Right. Mm-hmm.
No, and one of the most, I guess, at Transy, shout out Daniel Bennett, technical theater. We were learning about 2 different types of lights. Forgive me, Daniel. I don't remember the different types. I remember there was digital was one, and then I guess non-digital, like with a bulb, like a traditional light. And I'll ask him when I get man. I'm gonna fail that class. I already got an A in that class. He can't fail me now. And I was like, what is the difference between them? He was like, well, one of them, or LED, it's more expensive, but you have a wide span of different lights. You can change the color with a button. It's faster. It's easier. And I was like, Daniel, if price wasn't a thing, then why would you ever choose like original over new? He was like, because of the feel. And I was like, explain it. He's like, there is something about like the rawness of just straight up light from a spotlight that you can't get digitally. And I feel like that's true in a lot of things now, where like we live in a modern generation, but sometimes going back into like opening up the door of the past is not the worst thing in the world.
I mean, it's the same thing with, say, like people who collect vinyl. Like objectively, it sounds better and cleaner. I'm doing air quotes. I understand this is an audio-only medium, but there's just something about vinyl, these specific like quality of sound, the type of sound it produces that a lot of people are attracted to. And some of that's nostalgia, but some of that is, younger people really liking that specific style and how things, kind of become sanitized when you make it all clean and perfect.
Right. And there is a beauty in the imperfections in life. Oh, we're getting deep here. It's nice. I don't use it enough. I've got this bucket here.
Oh no.
Full of questions. That's the sound of the bucket.
Now, do I draw something or do you draw something?
You can draw something if you want. It's just questions that I didn't come up with. I came up with some of them, but most of them I didn't.
I'll go with this one.
And we don't know what it could be. So I want to get up there.
Is a hot dog a sandwich? I think it is.
Okay.
I think it
Objectively?
is. Objectively, it is. It is a... Now, okay, I'll pose you this.
Okay.
Do you think open-faced sandwiches are sandwiches?
No.
You don't think open-faced sandwiches are sandwiches? Okay, that complicates my argument just a little bit. Would you?
Because if you have one piece of bread with, like, I don't know, meat and cheese and lettuce and tomato on top of it, but not another piece of bread bread, then that's not a sandwich. That's just
fair.
food.
I think there's room for argument with it, and I recognize I'm employing a very liberal definition of sandwich, but I think anything that includes pieces of bread and non-bread sort of in between it classifies as a sandwich.
Okay.
And I get that as opening me up to is taco a sandwiches, and that's really not a road I want to go down.
Okay.
But I think
we're
even
afraid
though
of that argument.
a hot dog bun is technically one piece, there's enough separation there where, if you spread peanut butter on one piece of bread and then fold that bread over, that's a sandwich.
Not a big fan of peanut butter, but yeah.
Well, okay. Well, any sort of topping. If you fold it over, no one's going to dispute that's a sandwich because it's, have
Right.
that layer of bread.
That's
I
fair.
think it's the same thing with a hot dog bun.
That's fair.
Because while it's maybe one continuous piece, it's split in such a way to create the effect of two on either side.
That's a fair argument. Mm-hmm. Did you ever do any speech and debate as a kid?
I did not do any speech and debate as a kid, no.
You could debate. You could debate about some hot dogs. Did you ever have marshmallow fluff as a kid? That stuff was my jam.
Oh, gosh. I probably did. Just based... I don't have a lot of strong memories of it. But, just based on its prevalence, I probably did it.
Let me ask you this. 7-year-old Nate coming home after school on a Wednesday.
Oh, gosh.
He's got his meal all prepped, ready to go. What you coming home to?
7-year-old Nate?
Yeah.
Oh, 7-year-old Nate was real picky.
Nate, little tot Nate.
I was a big fan of spaghetti back in the day.
Okay.
That was a big fan of that.
Yeah.
If we're talking...
Like spaghetti out from a can?
No, not from a can. Not from a can. Like
Okay.
actual, made with pasta and beef.
Okay. Real spaghetti.
Real spaghetti.
Okay.
If we're talking desserts, ice cream, some chocolate syrup, pretty simple. If we're talking snacks, I know in 4th grade, this is going to sound kind of odd, but I know people who did it, is those packs of croutons, salad croutons.
Oh, yeah.
I just go into the pantry and...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was a little later, but that's the first I
Yeah.
can think of.
Oh, if I eat croutons by the sleeve, those things, oh, man. They're like... It's like okay, bear with me here. If there was a fish, okay, and his name was I don't know, Barley the fish, right? He's green and white.
Okay.
And he's
seeing the vision.
17-year-old fish, maybe I don't know, 10 meters wide. Is that, I guess that's fine.
That's very wide.
Okay, he's a fat one.
Okay.
But Barley.
I would argue that verges on whale
Okay.
size.
Oh.
Yes.
So not that.
Yeah. Meters are very long.
How big would you say Marlin is in Finding Nemo? Okay, imagine.
I think you may need millimeters instead
Yes,
of meters.
that.
Meters are like
No,
this.
not meters.
No.
I hate the metric system. 10 millimeter fish named Barley. Okay, you pick a species, and he's swimming around, right? Now let's say that we kidnap him and his entire family.
Okay.
Okay, and we take him to the desert. He's still gonna taste good, but it's not in the environment in which God intended him to be eaten in. You know what I mean?
I suppose.
That's my feelings with crouton. Croutons are the barley of the world.
Okay. Now, why was the fish's name Barley? Was there any significance
That was the
behind
first name that came to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to name the fish?
I think that's for the fish to decide.
Okay.
Really. I don't.
Ooh. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you think that we have a problem with modern day society with entrusting the parents of naming their child and not letting the child name themselves?
Oh gosh.
As soon as let's say that there's a
soon
doctor
as out
and a
of the
mother has a
room,
child named Barley,
and
they
microphone in hand is like, "What's your name?"
Yeah.
That's your name. Okay.
Yeah. I feel like we would have a lot more.
I doubt there'd be a lot of creativity in names.
Yeah, roll call would be very difficult.
It would be difficult.
It would just be a lot of screaming. Interesting. Would you name your child Barley? How old are you? I can ask that.
I am 21.
You're not a woman. All right. 20. Well, if you're a woman, that'd be rude. If you're a man, I don't care. 21-year-old Nate, right? Let's say that you're going to have a child tomorrow. Surprise.
Oh, God.
What are you naming your child? Boy and girl name, go. Tune in to About Time every weekday, the podcast where anything and everything can and will be discussed, but when the 20-minute timer is up, that's it. Thank you so much for spending 20 minutes of your time into 20 minutes of ours. Have a wonderful day, learn something new, follow the golden rule, and use your time wisely.